Good morning, y'all, y buenos dias. So we are here with my February favorites. So if you guys are interested in seeing what things I found super awesome this month, then keep on watching. Okay, so we are gonna start off with my TED Talks. So the first TED Talk that I have for y'all is called Skipping School. And as always, with everything, I will link it all down below just so that it's a lot easier for you guys just to pick and choose what you guys wanna watch and just make it a lot simpler. So yeah, Skipping School is a TED Talk on unschooling, which if you guys have been watching, I am super into and just very interested in it. I learned about it from the John Holt books, and so now I've just been diving a little bit deeper into it, and that TED Talk was just really like a good push forward when it comes to all of the stuff that I've been learning about. The next TED Talk is The Dangers of Whitewashing History. And this one is so good and so crucial. I think that, you know, again, you guys have been following me for a while. I talk about this all the time. The whitewashing of history is not only detrimental on like the short-term like lack of knowledge scale, but on the grand mass scale of our gaps in knowledge, which help us plan like major events and help us see things clearly and help us empathize with others. And so this is a great documentary, and it's from a perspective of a child, which is so awesome. And so it's a father-son duo, and he just talks about that experience, and I really recommend it. The next TED Talk is What Every New Parent Should Know, and this is just so reassuring, and it's a great TED Talk just talking about how we as parents want to have it all and do it all, and sometimes that's just not feasible, and we beat ourselves up a lot for it. And so I think that's a really good TED Talk for any new parents out there, or just parents of kids who are older even, just to kind of reestablish yourself and kind of reevaluate that you can't do it all, and that's okay. And the last one is your country at risk for becoming a dictatorship? And this was really interesting, and I love the speaker. She was really funny. It just kind of puts you into perspective of all of these things that are going on that you might not even notice because they seem so norm. They seem so they're so passive in how we live that we kind of don't notice it. And so it's a really great TED Talk, and again, the speaker was really funny, so I highly recommend that one as well. Okay, and now for the documentaries. All of these documentaries I watched on Netflix, so you can find them all there. So the first one is The Age of Rage, and it's on the alt-right, which was a really intense documentary. I have to like warn you guys, just because it's really hardcore and just in your face. And so I like watching things like that because I always want to understand the perspective that these people have. I want to know their way of thinking and like their root of their hatred, because I find that that's a good thing to be able to understand just where it all stems from. And in the documentary you can see a lot of their, you know, where it comes from and where it stems from, and it's really sad. I find it really sad when someone can have so much hatred towards another group of people on just ridiculous premises as well. And just to find yourself thinking that you're better than an entire group of people is just such a laughable thought to me. And so that's a really great documentary just to see how some of these people really think that way. And I know that there's tons of people out there who think that racism doesn't exist, that you know, this is all gone, like we had a black president, like it's all better now. Like, no, that's laughable as well. Like, that's not how it works. There's systematic racism that has been established and is just embedded into our everyday living, and so that doesn't go away because we have a black senator, black president, or, you know, this black woman is doing something, or this Latinx person is doing this, or this Asian woman is doing that. Like, that's not how it works. And so just seeing the immense boiling of rage and hatred that these people have is like stunning, right? It takes you back a little bit just because of how like just ridiculous it is. And so yeah, I highly recommend that one as well. The next one that I watched is Hiroshima, The Real History, and it's a bit longer. I think it was 2 hours long. It's a BBC documentary, and it is very informative, especially for me who I like knew the very gist of it, you know, like high school US history like overview of it, and this goes into a lot more detail. And what I really enjoyed about it is that they took people who were affected by it personally and they spoke and they had their narrative. I think that that's really important for any form of documentary or any sort of resource that you're going to learn from, whether it's a book or a show or a movie or whatever it may be. Find resources where the people who are affected by it, they have control of the narrative and not someone else, because that's history for you. If you're hearing it from somebody else, they're gonna switch over that narrative to where it benefits themselves. And so hearing that perspective from them who suffered, who saw this, whose parents got killed, whose family members got, you know, destroyed in this event, was really eye-opening. And I think it's really important to always hear people out from their narrative and their perspective. The next one that I watched was Lessons from a School Shooting, and this one was extremely difficult to watch. It's actually a shorter documentary. Netflix is doing these like 30-minute, 40-minute documentaries as opposed to like 2 hours or an hour and a half, which I think is really great for people who might not have time to sit down and watch a 2-hour documentary. These 30, 40-minute documentaries are really great, but very, very difficult to watch. It actually explores 2 different school shooting events, one from here and one in Europe, and they just were able to connect and speak about it, and just gives me kind of the chills just thinking about it, just because of how horrible it is. And so both groups of people spoke out about it, and we're just discussing, you know, how to move forward from this tragic event and like what possibilities of avoiding stuff like that. And so it was very, very touching, very hard to watch, but I really recommend it. And the last one that I watched was Period, End of Sentence, and so phenomenal and so great and so just inspiring. It talks about groups of women. First of all, it reflects on the whole idea of a period and menstruation surrounding women, and it focuses on a group of women in India and how the lack of knowledge, just first and foremost, the lack of knowledge that many of these women have, and this is all over the world, including here. And it's tragic because we as women are held back from so many different things because of that, and especially in places where proper handling of it is very lacking. And so there's these group of just badass women getting together, and they start like a pad making company, and it's like, you know, super grassroots, like they're all together making it, and it's just so inspiring and so heartwarming that it felt so good at the end of the documentary, just finishing watching it. And I hope that it really invokes like a revolution when it comes to stuff like that, because like I said, this is all over the world. This is an issue that everyone who has a period everywhere has, if they don't have access. And so this is something that my mom and all of her sisters struggled with whenever they were growing up in El Salvador. They just had such a vast gap in their knowledge when it came to that. They were never educated because the people who were gonna educate them, they didn't know anything either. And so, and then lack of access to any form of even a reusable pad or disposable pads or anything like that. So it really touched my heart just watching it. And my mom and I discussed it afterwards, and she was super hyped that there are women out there doing it. I highly, highly recommend that documentary. I think that it won like an award now I'm not too sure what award it won, but it was like a pretty big award. So that was super exciting too, that something of this nature wins like a really big prestigious award. So yeah, that is a must watch on Netflix as well. And a show that I found on Netflix, it was super on a whim. It was like after I was watching one of the documentaries, it kind of came up, and it's called Workin Moms. And it's so funny. I'm on like the 3rd episode because they're only 30 minutes long. And I kind of just watched it while Zach and Luna were at, they were at the DMV or something. And so I watched it and it was so funny, and I find it really relatable because there's like so many different perspectives on it, which I think is really good when it comes to a show like that. But yeah, it's really silly but very serious at the same time, and it shows motherhood from a lot of different perspectives, and so I really enjoyed it, and it's called Workin Moms. A YouTube channel that I've been loving lately, and I've been loving this channel for a while now, but I figured I would mention it in here because if you guys like watching these sorts of videos of me, then y'all are gonna love this channel, and it's called The Origin of Everything, and they're super short videos. They're maybe like 6 minutes long, and they are on so important topics that are critical for us to learn about, but like we might not have the time or resources to like really dig deep into it. So that kind of gives you like a good overview of stuff, like the origin of like pretty much everything, like the origin of why girls wear pink and boys wear blue, the origin of middle names, the origin of, you know, like pretty much everything. So it's really cool, and I highly recommend it. I watched like maybe one a day, and it's just really fun to like learn these bits and pieces of information. And the discussion groups, the discussion in the comments are actually pretty decent. They're not as terrible as in other places on YouTube. And so yeah, I highly recommend that channel. So one of my favorites is the Succulent Studio. They are a subscription box for succulents. Is that not the coolest thing ever? And so I got a couple of succulents, and they're my babies right now, and I'm just gonna transfer them soon because they're growing a little bit too much in the little plant pot that they came in. And so I'm gonna transfer them over soon, and I can't wait to show you guys once they're all a little bit bigger. And so yeah, super great subscription. I had mentioned it in one of my other videos, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit more just because of how neat and how great of an idea that is for a gift for someone who wants new plants, or like maybe like a housewarming present or something like that. And so yeah, I have been loving my babies. And a couple of items that I've been loving this month. This is a lotion bar by Sustainably Jennifer, which I thought was hilarious. But it's a lotion bar, and it smells, sandalwood is one of my favorite scents. It comes in a little tin container, and oh, I wish y'all could smell it. And you just, it's a lotion bar, you just rub it on wherever, and it smells so good. Now I feel like, oh my god, I feel like I don't even know, like, what's y'all's favorite smell? To me, sandalwood or like any kind of woody smell is like one of my favorites. My dad growing up, and now, but like he has always worked construction ever since he was like a child, and my grandpa did too. And so that smell just reminds me of like home, like wood, and like outdoorsy smells always remind me of like being home. And it's like just one of my favorite smells. So I've been loving that lotion bar. I use it every day, and I'm probably gonna have to get another one soon because it just smells so good. Another thing that I've been loving, which is kind of like scary, and I'm gonna show you guys, it comes in as this little container. I was sent this, and it's kind of awesome. It is a derma roller, and I don't know if you guys will be able to see, it's probably not gonna focus, but it's got these tiny little needles on it, and you kind of roll it on your face. And I know that seems really scary, but I did some research on it, and it just like helps rejuvenate the skin growth, and y'all know how I love skincare stuff. And so they sent this over to me, and I freaking love it. I love, not only does it like you feel the blood rushing to your face, and that's like, you know, it's restarting that whole process, but I also just love the fact that I feel like I'm in a spa and I'm all like at night. And so I've been really loving this lately. And now for books. And so the first book is Lies My Teachers Told Me, and such a great book. I highly recommend it. It's a book talking about how history is so distorted and how straight up we're lied to, and how we need to be much more aware of this, and how we need to realize the perspective and who is writing this and why they're writing this, and how did they benefit from this. And so I really recommend this to anyone out there who is on a journey to start learning more about authentic history. Next one that I read was Becoming, and I loved it. I really did love it. I've been on the waiting list for this book for months. I read it on my Libby app, and I was on the waiting list, like I said, forever. And so it sends me a little update once the book is available, and I was like, what? And I read it super fast because I was so into it. And Michelle just talks about, you know, her life, and I like that she really talks about it from her perspective, and not a perspective that maybe like someone else might have wanted, which is like the Obama, like her husband perspective. Like it talks about like her life and like how she did her thing, which was awesome, and I really loved it. Spark Joy was the next one that I read. Like I said, last month I read The Magic of Tidying Up, and so this was kind of like the second part of that. And I really think, like I've said before, if you guys have watched the show on Netflix, the show is really only like such a fraction of what like all the heart and the meaning of it. And I really like, if you love the show, then you really need to read the book. And it just talks about it on such a deeper level, on not just minimalism, but like the authenticity of living. And man, it's just super good. And I really recommend anyone who is on this journey to minimalism, or like living simply or living mindfully, to read both of those books. Ghost Boys was another one that I read, and it is like a youth book, like more child youth oriented book. And I really think that more adults should read books that are oriented towards youth and children, because a lot of them present information in a different way than like for an adult. And I really loved it. It was very emotional and impactful, and talks about a boy who was killed by the police, and just his life and his past life, his life and then his afterlife is what I meant to say. So I really recommend it. It was really good. It's a very short book because it's, like I said, it's meant for younger readers, but super impactful, and the message is very clear. Next one I read was the Unschooling Handbook. And like I said, I've been really into just learning all about unschooling and homeschooling, and it's actually right there. And yeah, I really loved it. It's very concise, and what I liked about it is that it gave a lot of parent perspective on it. It wasn't really like, this is what you should do. It's just, this is what we do, and this is what we do, and this is how we feel about this. And it was a lot of different perspectives, and just shows like how no two unschooling or homeschooling parents are the same, and how that's okay, and how your unschooling might look way more structured than this person's unschooling. And so it was really cool just to see all of the different perspectives and all of the different ways that unschooling is done. The next one that I read was Project Animal Farm, and this one, what I really enjoyed about it is that it wasn't like very vegan-y or anything like that, which is really good for people who are like scared of the word and are just not into anything having to do with that. And so it's written in a way that they can read it and like fully understand it without having to be pushed a vegan agenda. And so I really recommend this book to anyone who's just interested in how our modern day animal products are collected, to put it lightly. It is very harsh for any of you guys who don't know much about animal agriculture, and I really recommend it to anyone who is either in the beginning of this journey to try to eat less animal products, or just interested in knowing where your food comes from. And so it's called Project Animal Farm, and it's a really good read. The next one that I read was an absolutely remarkable thing. I love switching up books. If you guys have been watching, you guys see that like none of them really go together. Like they're all from like random different places. And the reason why I read such random genres is because I don't like to be caught in one, because I will get like kind of sad and depressed if I'm only reading like history books, because they're mostly depressing. And so I like to kind of scatter it around and read fiction and like silly stuff and informational stuff, and just to keep a balance. And so I really liked this book. It was really funny. It was a quick read, and I wonder if they're gonna make a movie about it, because it would be really funny to see how they make a movie about this one. The last book that I read was Wild, which I think has won like tons of awards. In the beginning was kind of slow, because I like to read books and not know much about what the book is about, unless it's like a book that I don't know, that I've been wanting to read and I know pretty much what it's going to be about. But this one, I didn't know much about it. All I knew that it was really good and that a lot of people enjoyed it. And so the beginning I was like, you know, whatever. But then once it started talking, like once she started talking about her life, it's about this woman who treks the Pacific Coast Trail, and it's really, really good. And she talks a lot about her struggles in her life and then compares it to the trail. Really, really good, really inspirational. And so now Zach and I have this like lifelong goal that we're going to, we need to find a trail first. So if you guys know of any trails in the US that are like just bam, you know, like that, like one of those kinds of trails, like Zach and I are really destined to one day trek like a whole trail. Like it'll take obviously like months to do, but really the book just inspired me. And she's such a strong woman, and I love reading books where like women tell their stories. Like I said, I like stories where the person who's living it is telling it, as opposed to some third or fourth person going in and not telling it how it is. And so really recommend this one. It's called Wild. So that is it for this month's favorites. I know that these videos are kind of long, but I just always want to like talk a lot about it. And so in addition to all of my favorites, I wanted to kind of talk about a GoFundMe page that really struck my heart. It's really hard to even talk about. My friend actually was telling me about it, and it's about a family in Canada who they were a Syrian refugee family who moved to Canada, and the parents lost all 7 of their kids in a house fire. And so it's a GoFundMe page for that. You guys can read more about it, because I literally can't talk too much about it, because I'll just but yeah, so I have a link to that down below. If you guys feel it in your hearts to donate, please do. I had such an emotional connection with this, and so I felt compelled to share it with you guys. And yeah, so that's a super important cause that I think that if you are able to, either monetarily or just by sharing the page with other people, I think that it would help them out a lot. So that is it for today's video. As always, if you guys have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. Tlazocamahti for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later.